Pack your bags and get out. You're 25. It's high time you learn to be independent, my father snapped across the Christmas Eve dinner table while my brother smirked over his wine glass. I picked up my coat, zipped my overnight bag, and walked calmly toward the front entrance without offering a single complaint. Just as my fingers touched the brass door handle, my father sprinted down the hallway, his face pale with sudden realization, shouting, "Stella! You're still going to transfer money for our house mortgage and utilities every month, right?" My name is Stella Webb. To understand why my father believed he could kick me out of the house while simultaneously expecting me to fund his entire lifestyle, you have to look into the toxic financial structure of the Webb family. We lived in the historic suburb of Oak Ridge Heights, located just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. My father, Marcus Webb, was a former middle management supervisor at a local paper mill who had taken early retirement 7 years ago and promptly declared himself done with working for the rest of his life. My younger brother, Brandon, was 22 years old and possessed the exact same allergic reaction to honest labor. Brandon spent his days playing competitive video games, buying expensive designer sneakers with borrowed money, and lying on the living room sofa while my father praised him as a misunderstood genius who was just waiting for the right corporate opportunity. I was the invisible engine that kept the entire Webb household from collapsing into financial ruin. For 5 grueling years, I worked as the chief senior financial analyst and managing director of regional acquisitions at Apex Peak Capital, a premier investment trust in downtown Minneapolis. I worked 12-hour days, negotiated multi-million-dollar commercial real estate buyouts, and managed institutional portfolios for high-net-worth clients. Despite my high corporate title, my father treated me like a resident servant who existed solely to pay for his comfort. 5 years ago, when Marcus took early retirement, the family home at 814 Elmwood Lane was 6 months away from bank foreclosure due to unpaid mortgage debts. Marcus had sat me down in the kitchen, shed crocodile tears, and begged me to take over the finances so he wouldn't lose his prized 4-bedroom suburban house. Because I was young, trusting, and desperate for my father's approval, I agreed. I set up automated monthly bank transfers from my personal accounts to pay the primary mortgage, the secondary property tax liens, the high-speed internet, the electric bills, the heating, gas, the home insurance, and even the weekly grocery delivery accounts. Every single month, nearly $4,500 of my hard-earned salary was quietly swallowed up by the Webb household expenses. Marcus and Brandon didn't view my financial support as a generous sacrifice. They viewed it as their natural birthright. Whenever I attempted to discuss setting up a budget, asking Brandon to get a part-time job, or requesting that Marcus contribute a small portion of his pension toward the utility bills, my father would slam his glass down on the table and launch into a bitter tirade. "How dare you bring up money in this house?" Marcus would roar at me, his face turning red with manufactured outrage. "I raised you, Stella. I put a roof over your head when you were a child. Paying these bills is the absolute bare minimum you owe this family for everything I gave up for you." Brandon would laugh from the sofa, tapping his phone screen. "Yeah, Stella, stop being so greedy. You work at a big fancy finance company. You have plenty of cash. Stop whining like a victim." I tolerated this dynamic for years because I believed that family meant standing by people even when they were difficult. I lived in one of the smaller upstairs bedrooms, kept my head down, paid every bill on the exact first day of the month, and absorbed their quiet, verbal abuse. The breaking point arrived on Christmas Eve. For weeks, Marcus had insisted that we host a festive holiday dinner at the house. I had personally spent $1,200 on high-end catering, artisan decorations, premium wine, and expensive gifts for both Marcus and Brandon. I spent the entire afternoon setting the dining room table, decorating the tree, and ensuring every detail was perfect. At 7 o'clock, we sat down for dinner. Brandon opened his main gift from me, a $300 pair of limited edition noise-canceling headphones, and tossed them onto the side table without so much as a thank you. Marcus opened his gift, a leather-bound vintage watch, set it down, and immediately began complaining that the roast beef catering was too dry.
Halfway through the meal, I casually mentioned that I had been offered a major executive promotion at Apex Peak Capital that would require me to travel to corporate headquarters in Chicago 2 days a week, starting in the spring. The moment the word promotion left my mouth, Marcus's face darkened with intense hostility. Must be nice to sit in air-conditioned offices all day bragging about your promotions while your brother is out here trying to find his true passion, Marcus sneered, cutting his meat aggressively. Dad, I'm not bragging, I replied softly, setting my fork down. I worked 80 hours a week for 3 years to earn this position. It's a huge step forward for my career. Brandon let out a loud, mocking laugh from across the table. Career? You just analyze spreadsheets, Stella. Anyone can do that. You think you're better than us just because you wear tailored suits? I looked at my brother, feeling a deep, heavy exhaustion settling in my bones. Brandon, you haven't held a job in 3 years. You spend all day playing video games while I pay for your high-speed internet, your groceries, and your phone plan. Marcus slammed his wineglass onto the tablecloth so hard the red liquid sloshed over the rim. That is enough, he roared, pointing a trembling finger at my face. I am sick and tired of your arrogance, Stella. You come into my house, disrespect your brother, and throw your money in our faces like you're some kind of saint. It is my money, Dad, I said, my voice rising for the first time in years. I pay for every single light bulb in this house. I pay the mortgage. This is my house, Marcus screamed, standing up from his chair, his eyes bulging with rage. You are just a guest here, Stella, and I will not have an ungrateful, disobedient daughter disrespecting me under my own roof. You think you're so smart? Pack your bags and get out of my house, right now. You're 25 years old. It's high time you learn to be independent. Brandon leaned back in his chair, letting out a cruel, triumphant chuckle from across the table. Yeah, time to pack it up, Stella. Go find your own place if you're so rich. I looked at my father, standing at the head of the table, his face twisted in ugly, entitlement-fueled anger. Then I looked at my brother, smirking like a spoiled child who thought he had just won a prize. In that quiet, crystalline moment, the heavy fog of familial guilt that had bound me to this house for 5 years completely vanished. I felt no anger. I felt no sadness. I felt only an incredible, weightless freedom. Okay, I said quietly. I stood up from the dinner table, walked up the stairs to my bedroom, and pulled out my large leather overnight bag. I packed my laptop, my work files, my personal identification documents, my expensive jewelry, and 4 sets of business suits. I left my old childhood furniture, my old clothes, and every item I didn't care about behind. 10 minutes later, I walked down the carpeted stairs, wearing my heavy winter coat, carrying my bag in one hand. Marcus was standing in the living room near the Christmas tree, his arms crossed, expecting me to be weeping, apologizing, and begging him on my knees to let me stay. Brandon was sitting on the sofa, holding his phone, ready to record my humiliation. I didn't look at either of them. I walked straight past the living room, heading directly for the front foyer. As my hand reached out and touched the cold brass door handle, Marcus suddenly froze. A sudden, terrifying thought flashed through his mind, washing the arrogant anger right off his face. He sprinted across the entryway, his boots thudding against the hardwood floor, stopping just 2 feet behind me, his voice pitching up into a nervous, frantic, high-pitched gasp. "Stella, wait," Marcus called out, his hands trembling. You're still going to transfer money for our house mortgage and utilities every month, right?" The entryway went deathly quiet. Brandon stopped tapping his phone screen in the living room. His head snapped toward the hallway. I paused with my hand on the brass door handle. I turned my head slowly, looking at my father over my shoulder. His face was completely pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of sudden realization and sheer financial terror. For 5 years, Marcus had completely forgotten that the roof over his head, the heat warming his living room, and the food in his refrigerator didn't come from his authority. They came directly from my bank account. A quiet, cold smile spread across my face. "Start being independent, Dad," I whispered. "You're 58. It's high time you learned how to pay your own bills." I opened the front door, stepped out into the crisp, falling Christmas Eve snow, and shut the door firmly behind me. I walked down the driveway, got into my luxury sedan, and drove directly to the Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Minneapolis. I booked a stunning executive suite overlooking the snow-covered Mississippi River, ordered champagne from room service, and spent the most peaceful Christmas Eve of my entire life. At 6 o'clock the next morning, Christmas Day, I opened my laptop and went to work. With a few precise clicks on my online banking portal, I canceled every single recurring automated bank transfer associated with 814 Elmwood Lane. I canceled the $4,000 monthly mortgage payment to the primary lender. I canceled the utility transfers for electricity, heating gas, water, and trash collection. I canceled the high-speed gigabit fiber internet subscription and terminated the weekly grocery delivery account. Next, I called my personal attorney, Marcus Vance. Because my father had been facing total tax foreclosure 5 years ago, I had quietly structured the secondary property tax bailout loan through a private corporate LLC that I owned personally. Under the terms of that notarized agreement, if the primary mortgage or property taxes fell into default for more than 30 days, my private LLC held the legal right to execute immediate judicial foreclosure and demand full immediate repayment of the $60,000 tax lien. By January 1st, the consequences of my father's arrogance began to hit the Webb household like a freight train. On the first day of the new month, the automated mortgage payment bounced. A week later, the high-speed fiber internet was disconnected. By the middle of January, the heating gas and electricity companies sent final urgent termination notices to the house.
Panic completely erupted at 814 Elmwood Lane. My phone blew up with hundreds of missed calls, hysterical text messages, and furious voicemails from both Marcus and Brandon. "Stella, what did you do to the internet? Brandon can't play his games." "Stella, the mortgage company called. They said the account is unpaid. Transfer the money right now." "Stella, you are a heartless monster. Your father is freezing in this house. Call us back immediately." I didn't answer a single call. I blocked both of their phone numbers, blocked their email addresses, and transferred my executive team to a new penthouse apartment in the historic North Loop district of Minneapolis, keeping my new address completely secret. Deprived of my salary, Marcus was forced to face the harsh reality of his situation. He had zero liquid savings, his small monthly pension was barely enough to cover basic groceries, and he had no idea how to navigate modern corporate finance. When Marcus went to the local bank to ask for a loan extension, the loan officer laughed in his face, pointing out that his credit score was in total ruin and the primary mortgage was already 60 days in default. Desperate, Marcus tried to force Brandon to get a job, but Brandon had zero work experience, zero skills, and refused to work anything other than a high-paying executive position that he was completely unqualified for. By the end of February, the primary mortgage lender filed formal judicial foreclosure papers against 814 Elmwood Lane. Simultaneously, my private corporate LLC executed its legal enforcement rights on the $60,000 tax lien, accelerating the legal eviction process. On a freezing Tuesday morning in late March, 3 months after Christmas Eve, the final legal auction took place on the steps of the Hennepin County Courthouse. My private corporate LLC purchased the property deed for pennies on the dollar, taking full legal ownership of 814 Elmwood Lane. 2 weeks later, county sheriff deputies arrived at the house with a formal writ of possession, ordering Marcus and Brandon to vacate the premises within 2 hours. I watched the eviction take place from the back seat of my chauffeur-driven executive sedan, parked across the street from the house where I had grown up. Marcus stood on the damp lawn in a faded coat, weeping openly as deputies carried his old furniture out onto the curb. Brandon stood beside him, clutching a plastic trash bag filled with his clothes, looking terrified, confused, and thoroughly broken. The arrogance, the smirks, and the entitlement were completely gone, replaced by the crushing reality of their own self-inflicted ruin. As the deputies locked the front door and handed the legal master keys to my corporate attorney, Marcus happened to look across the street. He spotted my sedan. He recognized me sitting in the back seat behind the tinted glass. Marcus came running across the street, stumbling over the curb, his hands outstretched, sobbing hysterically as he banged his fists frantically against my car window. "Stella! Stella, please!" Marcus screamed, his voice cracking with desperate, pathetic begging. "Look at us! We're homeless! We have nowhere to go! Please, open the door! Forgive me! I'm your father!" Brandon ran up behind him, crying like a child, pressing his hands against the glass. "Stella, please, we're sorry. I'll get a job. Just let us come live with you. Don't do this to your family." I slowly rolled down the electric window just 2 inches, looking down at my weeping father and brother with calm, unshakable serenity. 10 years ago, Dad, you told me that paying your bills was the bare minimum I owed you. And on Christmas Eve, you told me to leave and learn to be independent."
Marcus sobbed, wringing his hands in utter agony. "I was wrong, Stella. I was foolish and arrogant. Please, save your father." "I am being independent, Dad," I replied softly. "And now, you and Brandon get to learn how to do the exact same thing." I rolled the window back up, insulating myself from their hysterical cries. "Driver," I said quietly, "take me to the office." The sedan pulled smoothly away from the curb, leaving Marcus and Brandon standing on the cold street side, surrounded by their trash bags and broken pride as I drove toward my bright, peaceful future. The aftermath was absolute and permanent. The house at 814 Elmwood Lane was fully renovated by my development team and sold to a young, loving family for a $600,000 profit. Stripped of their home and status, Marcus and Brandon were forced to move into a tiny, dilapidated 1-bedroom basement apartment in a rundown district of the city. Marcus was forced to take a low-level night janitor job at a commercial shopping mall in his late 50s just to pay for basic rent and canned food. Brandon, unable to leech off anyone else, was finally forced to take a minimum wage job flipping burgers at a fast food drive-thru, working 40 hours a week while living on a fold-out couch in their tiny living room. Meanwhile, my life expanded into an era of extraordinary success, peace, and abundance. I received my executive promotion at Apex Peak Capital, managing a $100 million portfolio while traveling between Minneapolis, Chicago, and New York. Free from the financial leeching of a toxic family, I built a multi-million-dollar personal investment portfolio and bought a gorgeous vacation villa overlooking Lake Superior. I launched the Stella Webb Financial Empowerment Fund, a $10 million charitable initiative that provides financial literacy, legal aid, and housing assistance for young women escaping financially abusive and coercive family environments. Sitting on the balcony of my North Loop penthouse, watching the spring sun rise over the glowing Minneapolis skyline, holding my head high with absolute pride, I knew that real independence isn't just about paying your own way. It is about cutting off those who exploit your generosity, standing firm in your dignity, and building a life where your peace is never up for sale. Educational lesson. This story illustrates a critical psychological and financial lesson regarding family dynamics, parasitic exploitation, and the toxic trap of normalized financial abuse. When entitled family members view your hard-earned financial support as an obligatory birthright rather than a generous sacrifice, they will continuously exploit your labor while treating you with total disrespect. Parents who demand that adult children fund their lives while simultaneously undermining their autonomy are engaging in coercive control disguised as family loyalty. True independence requires recognizing when your generosity is being weaponized against you. Cutting off financial enabling is not an act of cruelty. It is a necessary boundary that forces parasitic relatives to face the real-world consequences of their own choices. Personal advice. If you are currently serving as the silent financial engine for family members who disrespect you, minimize your achievements, or demand your income under the guise of family obligation, you must realize that you do not owe your life or financial future to your abusers. Do not allow guilt or manipulated traditions to keep you trapped in a parasitic relationship. Audit your finances, revoke shared access to your accounts, and establish strict, unbreakable boundaries. Walk away from environments that treat your generosity as a duty, build your wealth and career in peace, and remember that protecting your own financial sovereignty is the ultimate form of self-respect.